time for the Unexed News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Unexed News podcast, Margie K.
Hello and welcome to Unexed News. I'm your host, Margie K. And this evening we have a very special guest for you. We're going to be talking about an abduction experiences this evening. And for some of you who are a little squeamish, you may not want to continue watching. But yeah, because there's a lot of evidence here. Tina Bird lives in the southern part of the UK. She's an international author, lecturer, ufologist, and lifelong abductee, whose case has been documented and investigated as one of the UK's biggest female abduction cases, backed up with medical evidence, photo scans, x-rays, operations, and reports. Her case has been in 3 issues of UFO Truth Magazine and several documentaries. Her third book is called The Bonded, The Truth About Alien Abduction, and is about her account in her own words. Tina is better known in the world of ufology for being an activist and a voice for justice for abductees. Welcome to the program, Tina.
Hello. Well, thank you for having me on, Margie.
So good to see you, and thank you for coming on to share your story with us, which is quite compelling. We were talking for a few minutes before the program, and you've just got an amazing story. So can you take us back to the beginning? When did strange things start happening to you?
My first account as a child, you don't really think of it. When you're being taken or abducted, you don't realise what's going on until you're a bit older. My first experience was what I remember, it might have been before that, but my actual my memory is that I was 6 years old. I was living at my parents' house, woke up in the middle of the night. Everything was like black. There was a light on in the bathroom hallway. My bedroom door was open and I woke up and I was just so alert. I just felt really alert. And for some reason, I don't know what it was, I got up. I could hear my brothers breathing in the other room. My mum and dad were snoring in the next room, a bit along the landing. And then all I remember, I'm not sure how long I stood there for, all I remember was this light, this bright white light that came straight through the ceiling, through the landing. It covered the hallway and went straight through the floor. It was in front of me. There was no sound, no nothing. All of a sudden, this light just went, there's a face appeared in the light, like it filled the hallway. And I didn't know what to do. All I remember is having my pink, white, long night dressing gown on. And I turned to run in my room. And as I turned to run, it felt like I was stuck or slow motion. And the light zoomed towards me, like with my back to it, trying to get away from it. And that's the light overtook me and I don't remember anything. And that was my first experience. So I had excuse me. I had a few more as like 8 and 10. Wake up with like holes in my leg, tiny like match head holes. And then as I got older, it was the drilling of the teeth, and I'd wake up and I'd have a taste in my mouth like a dry chalk. All I can describe it is like you're in your bed and a bright light, like a flicker, a spark light. It's like a huge engulfing, it's bright white light. It engulfs your room, like for a split second. And then next thing I know, it feels like metal ants in your mouth drilling your teeth, and you can't do anything. And your teeth crumble to like a chalk powder. And then these little ants are gluing your teeth back together. That's the only way I can describe it. That happened like maybe as a child growing up a couple of times a year. And then I had no years, where it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, as an older adult, a late teenage, older adult, it just stopped one day, just stopped, and I never had it. It could be when you're abducted as a child, looking back now, As a child, you put one episode behind you. You don't tell your mum and dad. You don't think anything's different. And people say when you're younger, well, why didn't you say anything to anybody? Why don't you tell anybody? Well, do you tell anybody if you go to like your nan's house or who your nan is? You know who your nan is. It's like a member of the family, and you just think this being is either a member of your family or this happens to everybody. You don't know as a child, and then
Right.
it kind of, if you're unlucky enough to remember like me, it kind of dissipates from you and it kind of moves on to there. And then 3 years, I had some really scary, horrendous, frightening, and very painful other abductions. The two major ones I reflect back on now. And people that do say that they want to be abducted, I think do need a psychiatric check. But where I stand, the only reason I came forward is this one particular night between my mid 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Me and my partner was laid in bed, went to sleep. All I remember, it was hot, windows were kind of open, I believe. And went to bed and then nothing. All I remember is my eyes not waking up, but all I remember is I was on my right-hand side, looking to the right-hand side of the bed. I was on the king size bed. Excuse me. The sheets were drawn back. My partner was missing, and there was a bluey green light that engulfed the whole room from somewhere on the right-hand side of the bed. I wasn't sure if it was coming through the wall, coming through the floor. Don't think it was coming through the ceiling, and engulfed the room. But the problem was, literally, if I could have moved, like my eyes bulged forward, like from blackness, this creature was literally 2 feet from me. So I'm on the right-hand side of the bed. This thing is stood next to the bed. And it was so thin. It was like the size of like a 6 to 8 year child, thinner than that. But his head was completely different. And it kind of bent down, but not as we would, like lean forward, because our neck comes like forward and out. Theirs comes straight from the middle of the neck up. Excuse me. And this thing just leant forward, and it bent from the hips, but down in an awkward position, like a springing kind of position. And it bent forward to look at the two, I had some pictures of my huskies and some old dollies that I was looking at. And then it stopped. It realised I was awake. My partner was missing, and it didn't want to connect with me or anything like that. And the next thing I know, it all went bright white light. And literally the next thing I do, I open my eyes, it's daylight. My partner is physically sat up in bed, holding his throat like that, leaning forward. And the first words out of his mouth is, "My throat hurts, my bottom hurts." And that's the first words. And I said, "Do you remember anything from last night?" He's like, "No, I feel terrible." And I questioned him for a couple of days, and he was in quite a bad way. I had a bit of tummy pain, nothing out of the ordinary, but it hurt. And then within days to weeks, we became seriously ill. Within like 6 weeks, I was vomiting blood. My partner was doing the same. He was having bowel problems. I was having stomach problems. It became worse for me. He lost a severe amount of weight for a man, a few stone in a very short period. Went to see the doctor. I was having significant chest pain. And she said, "I'm going to send you for a scan." So she said, laparoscopy, down the throat, put a camera down the throat, and I'll send you to see a specialist. You need to get this sorted out. It's quite serious. So she said the same, and I took my partner down. She saw the same doctor, but our appointments were a week apart. So I go in, and it's Professor Brown at Southampton University Hospital. Took me in, and now they've got all this modern technology in, and he called me in, and there's about 6 or 8 people in the room, and they lay you down. Because I'm allergic to anaesthetic, I didn't have any anaesthetic then, so I've got to be really careful about things like that. So they laid me down on this bench, and they kind of sprayed my throat, put it down, and there's a big TV screen in front of you. So now they give you something to look at. You can look at the tube going down the side of the tummy if you want to. And all of a sudden he puts this tube down. He's going, "Oh my God, get pictures of this. Are we filming? Are we recording this?" And he said, "Oh, we get bots, so let's get this. He goes, I don't know what's going on." He said, "I've never seen anything like this." And it looked like black membrane, again, grey black membrane. And he said, "Oh, it's something, you've got like this mark inside your body anyway." He pulled it out and he said, "Tina, I'm not quite sure what's going on." He said, "I'm a professor and I've never seen this." He said, "We're going to have a look at it." He said, "If you proceed to vomit blood again severely," he said, I can see it's quite agitated inside." He said, "Come back immediately." He said, "Just come to the clinic. You won't need an appointment, and I'll see you. You may have to wait." He said, "But I will see you." He said, all I can do is give you some pain medication and some ulcer medication because we don't know what it is, but that's the only thing that could calm your internal problem at the moment. He said,
So what was going through your mind at this point?
oh, I thought I had like a ruptured ulcer or I had cancer. I've never, the blood and the pain, it felt like someone stabbing you. It was awful. It felt like someone had like scratched the inside and was squeezing you the whole time. So even if you swallowed water, it still hurt. If you ate food, it would hurt. And if you moved, it hurt. If you turned over, it hurt. So I was in a lot of pain. And so off I went. And he gave me some stuff there and then. He gave me some stuff. He said, take this down to the prescription. He came out with this little bottle of 4 pills and he said, have that now. So I had him now. He said, wait outside for 20 minutes. I waited outside for 20 minutes. He came out and gave me this prescription with a thing to say, go back in, any time and another appointment for the end of the month, like 4 weeks' time. So he said, I'll see you then to see if anything's healed and I'll give you the results and what have you. Well, 5 days later, so this was, say, on the Monday or the Tuesday, 5 days later on the following week, on the Monday or the Friday or the Monday, I took my partner in and we sat there in this clinic and all of a sudden the professor comes out and he's like, oh, Tina, he said, you're back at the clinic. Is everything all right? He said, I'll put you on the list to be seen. I said, oh, no, you're not seeing me. He said, are you having problems? I said, no, you're actually seeing my partner today. He said, partner? He said, does he live with you? I'm like, yeah. And he said, come with me. And he said, Tina, just wait there. Because is he showing the same symptoms as you? And I said, yes. And he looked shocked. He said, oh, we'll be about 20 minutes. An hour and a half later, he came back. So my partner had the same piece of yellow discharge paper, which showed the same scarring at the same depth within inside our body. So we both had the same markings at the same depth in the middle of our tummy together from this one night. My partner didn't remember anything, but the professor said, you need to go have some blood done and come back in an hour and a half. So go back to have something to eat. He said, and I want to talk to you. And he took us in this little room. He said, I want to prepare you for the worst. He said, I hope for the best. He said, I'm going to send Marco for a scan before you go home today. By then, we'd been there about 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And he said, we may think he's had liver cancer that's spread. He's got, like you, but he's got significantly more damage. And we're worried. So we thought he was going to die. We thought he had cancer. They couldn't find it. They kept telling us he had cancer. He had CAT scans, MRIs. He had everything, and they still couldn't find what was wrong with him. But both him and me, our enzyme levels were way off the charts, way up there. So,
Your what levels?
Enzymes and the liver enzymes and sugar enzymes were way off the chart. They were.
I see. Okay.
The normal reading, I think, for the liver one was 22. Mine was 149. He said 22 is considered high, and mine was 149.
You must have been terrified.
Yeah, I was. I was seriously terrified. They couldn't figure out what was going on. It was that point. I remembered what had happened. He still to this day has no recognition whatsoever. I just think whatever they use to subdue you, which is a light with a frequency in, which I've learned over the years, obviously doesn't work on me, or they've used it too much on me and it doesn't work any longer. So that's the reason I came forward, because I thought my partner was going to die and I didn't know if anyone else had suffered this, if there may have been a cure somewhere, I don't know. And I was so desperate at the time. And I contacted Gary Heseltine, an ex-policeman from the UFO Truth Magazine. Yeah. And I thought he's going to think I'm a nut. I'll just want some help anyway. I sent him a message and it took me about 4 months. By then it was nearly Christmas. So it took me about 4 months to work the coverage up. I thought I was going to say I'm a nut. He's going to be locked up. I sent him this message on, I think it was email or on my phone. I can't remember. And he got back to me. I couldn't believe it. Within like a day, he got back to me. He said, Tina, he said, I understand your position. He said, but I don't deal with this. And I thought, oh, here we go. But he said, there's you need to make an abduction claim. I'm like, what? How's that? He said, there's a professional, he said, here in the UK called David Hodrin. He's the chairman of Birmingham UFO Group, and he goes around the world interviewing people and making up investigative reports and doing testing and everything for people that have been abducted. So it took me another month to gather up. By then it was late January, early February. It took me, I think 2016 we're looking at now, I think, maybe 17, 16. And then I phoned David Hodgson. We were on the phone for 3 hours, and it's just gone from there. And he took me back. It took 2.5 years of investigative journalism. He looked through all my medical history. I've given permission to speak to all my doctors and the hospital. And he's had all my results for everything. And I've had scans, I've had X-rays, and I've had everything.
Mm-hmm.
I've got holes in my body, but and I'm not the only one. When one of the nights they took me, I saw hundreds of people up there. They were all awake but asleep. So no, I'm not the only one. I'm just probably the only one unfortunate that was awake, that it didn't work on. All the other people that were awake either haven't come forward or they don't remember. There was literally hundreds of people up there. So no, I'm not the only one. But where I stand now is I'm 53 now, and pain only gets worse, as you know, as you get older. I've had to be on HRT for the last 12, 13, 14 years now. So nearly 15 years, and I've got another 10 years of HRT to go. So that's doing my body no good. I have severe pelvic pain from the holes in my pelvis. For when I walk, when I put weight on, when I lay down, when I sit up, when I walk too far, it feels like someone's kicked me in the stomach. And I get headaches. My teeth have crumbled and fallen out. I've had severe nosebleeds. I've had an object removed from my bottom. I've had one removed from my hand, and now I've got another one in its place, which they can't remove because it's too deep in my hand against the blood supply. I've got 2 metal orb things stuck on my right rib, which you have X-rays of. I have a chip in my my left shoulder, and I have one in my left foot. So, and then I went to last year. Sorry, I went to a one of the UK's biggest contactee abduction support meetings here in the UK. So I had to travel a few hours to get to there. And they was just telling everybody, it was just abductees only, with all these, there was a lot of physicists there, geologists there, and astrophysicists. They were all there. And there's this other lady there. There's quite a few people in the room. And David got to talking about my case, because he spoke a little bit about everyone's case, and he said, this is the biggest one in the UK. We left it to last, and we're going to talk to you. And this lady started crying when he was showing her pictures of my leg, and she just started freaking out. And I thought, oh my God, I hope he hasn't upset her. And I said to her, are you okay? And she said, oh, even though my case has been investigated, she said, she pulled up her trousers. She said, I have the identical marks at the same depth and the same height on the same leg as you do. And this happened to me. And I showed her the pictures of the babies in these little black pods. And she said, I had that same thing. And they told me there was, what did she say? Silky babies going in there. I'm like, what the? And yeah. And she just started crying about it. But she actually had the same holes in her leg that I did, at the same depth in the body.
Okay. That's a lot to digest, because most people who are abductees and have signs and symptoms of being abducted, they have marks, unexplained marks happen. They've seen a blue-white light, and then they've been knocked out, and they don't remember anything after that, and they wake up in the morning, they have some evidence. But clearly, in your case, you are having clear memories of these events, and they're not being able to knock you out. And what stood out to me was when you mentioned earlier how you are allergic to anesthetic.
Yeah.
Okay. I am also allergic to anesthetic, and it's very difficult for them to get me under. And I have some clear memories as well, being abducted, although not anywhere near what you have, or the damage that you have to your body. During these abductions, were you able to observe the entities that were doing this, or get any idea of a reason why they're doing it?
Well, yes and no. So one thing I realised, it wasn't until I came forward and my case came out that you don't want to put it together. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to talk about it. And there's some years nothing happens, so it just kind of leaves you. It's like a built-up memory, like an everyday memory, and it kind of leaves you. You're not in pain, and you put it behind you. it wasn't until I came forward and spoke to David that I actually said, you need some time. And it did take, to be honest with you, I thought it was about time. I know what happened to me, but it did. Looking back, I was traumatized, and it took about 2 or 3 years to, sorry, just been past a cup of tea, to come to terms with what's actually happened and actually think about what has happened. And it is to put it together. So in my book, in my book, I've just wrote it down passage by passage about the different types of abduction. That's the one. And I've realised each time they've taken me, it's been the same kind. I didn't realise until later on. It wasn't until he asked me to draw pictures of this entity that it's been the same kind of one. It's been the same. And even though, I don't know why people call them grey for starters, that I think close up, I mean, literally close up. If I could have moved, I could have grabbed one. Literally, I could have overcome him in a second, just like that. There's no two ways about that. But because you are subdued, and so sometimes it's not blurred vision, but they step out of your vision. So you can't move your head to see where they've gone. You can only look forward. But so I'll get, and when they're talking to you, so when they physically lean over you, people, I've had people say, oh, that they frightened me. They looked over me. They was looking in my face with these big eyes. What I learned is they don't do that to frighten you. They look to see if you can talk to them. So, when I first noticed it happened, I think they must have taken me many times for me to pick up on it. I was still young. I was probably about 12, 13. So I'm not sure how many times they took me, but I only remember like 3 or 4 episodes since they took me at 6 by that time. But you don't realise until you look back thinking, well, it was the same being, and they only look over you like once, maybe twice, and that's to see if you can communicate. Now, by the time, say, I was 20 or 21, if one of them, if he was near me, just supposing he was in about 8 to 10 feet of me, he wouldn't need to lean over me. I could pick up on him. My eyes would shut. You stop seeing out your eyes, and you can talk to him. What I say that was like a link. I'll call it the link, the grey link, a link.
So do you mean telepathic?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I didn't know what telepathy was when I was a kid. So I just called it the link. I only knew it as a link. I just call it the grey link or the link. And now, as an adult, and as technology has developed, the only thing I can liken it to is Wi-Fi in the room. So when I was a child, when I was a kid, I'll just say it's the grey link, and someone you'd say, well, grey link. But now I can say the Wi-Fi. So I was a Wi-Fi receiver, and he was a Wi-Fi output. He was like a router. So that's the best way I can describe it. And then if he come to 8 to 10 feet with me, or he looks at me, and he turned to look at me, or he'd be, even if his back was to me, I could connect to him. Then I found out once you're in their link, they can hear you listening. So it's like a two-way link. And then then I could listen without them kind of knowing if I was listening through him, because they can stop you listening, whether that's to stop you learning too much, or whether that's their way of controlling information or controlling you. Because when it moves, it's so fast. It's like a silver core being pulled through your head, and it is so fast. But this particular time, I was on this bench. He was to the right of me, and there must have been about 8 or 10 at the probably about 12, 13 feet away, just slightly to my left, at the bottom of this bench, just to my left. I could just see him because I was sat up at 30-degree angle, so I could just see him. And I closed my eyes, and I was listening to him. It was like a hive mind. They were all, and it was. But then when more of them came in, there must have been about 16. Because you can hear them, so you're not opening physically looking, and you can hear the like individual voices, but like on individual Wi-Fi, if you like.
Okay, kind of like listening in on a party line.
Yeah. So, but they could hear me listening. So,
Wow.
but I can't comprehend what they're saying. But also, it wasn't until they put me in. It's going to sound crazy. It wasn't until they put me in a bubble to take me somewhere that I realised you could go back to a certain point in time, in our time and space, or their time and space in history at any point. But you could also, if you knew how to work it properly, you could see anyone else that said they'd been abducted. They would be in this link. Their link is like a digital book, from what I understand, from what they showed me, because they had like these baby clones of me. And it wasn't until this really happened. I've never been able to walk about, so I'm jumping from one thing to the next. So I'm trying to keep it all in together. But when they take you, He's never given me a name. All I know is the one that knows me, because I could, if you line them up, the smaller ones are about 2 to 3 feet tall, and they're not allowed to talk to, and they're like little clone ones. Sometimes there's a little difference in the skin tone, but they all kind of look the same. The other one's about 3 to 4 feet tall, maybe a little taller. He's taller. He's a lot thinner in the body. His head's larger. He's a lot skinnier. They're like little, what are called jelly baby men. They're like that. But they don't talk to you. They're like black or dark inside. There's a few things I picked up along the way. It took me many years, over like my lifetime. So it was one happened. Oh, how do you know this? It's like over 50 years have been taken. I realised that they're not. They told me the others are coming soon. They're not supposed to come here, but they do. That he said, you may not see me yet. And then they asked me to go with them, and I said no. And he said, you're brave, you're going to die on this planet, and this is how you're going to die. And he showed me like the sky on fire and this grey water coming up. Oh, it was horrendous.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And then he said that they come here because there's something in the water. They like the water here on our planet. There's something in the water that they like.
Okay. I understand that.
And then it wasn't until they showed me these clips. So I've never been able to get up and walk about. So I've always been like subdued. Now, the first time I remember waking up, it must have been when I was a kid, was this bright, they'd taken me with white light, and all I remember is being like down, not unable to move on this bench. And it's just like a film being recorded through your eyes. You can't move. You can't do anything. And this bright orange like ball of light came over me. And I was slightly sat up so I could see down my body. I was naked. It didn't have anything on, I don't think. And there's like a black grid over my legs, like a shadow, but it was a grid. And there were burning holes in each one of these sections on my leg.
Oh.
And it looked like if I was to light a match and put it in jelly, that's what it looked like. But I couldn't feel anything, but I could see it. And I couldn't smell any burning flesh, but I could see it. And they did the same kind of thing as an adult. And then it wasn't until years later I was laid on this bench, and I was sat up, and I noticed I had a rag on. I've always normally been naked. I was like at a 30-degree angle. The one that knows me was to the right. These were to the left. And I could see a bit more clearly. And the one that knows me came round to the other side of the bed. He said, if I agreed to behave, they would sit me right up. So I agreed to behave. They said, if I agreed to behave, they would let me get up. And there was definitely, this had never happened before. Mm-hmm. I like, yes, I agree. But each time I agreed to something, all went bright white light, and I don't remember. I'd just come round and all stood up with this rag on. I felt drugged. I felt like, because I'm allergic to anesthetic, you get a bit of taste in your mouth if they try to give you a sedative or something. Like, I can taste it in my chest. It's awful. And I had this taste, and immediately I knew, because you can't normally think, you can't use your senses when you're subdued. But I felt very controlled from behind. And as I walked, it felt like I was dragging my feet, like I was drugged. I knew I was drugged. I could taste the bitterness. It was horrible. But as I walked forward, I could see the light dim a bit, and this like light kind of evened out, and there was hundreds upon hundreds of rows of these black pods. They're about 2 feet wide and about 2.5 feet tall, on these little stools. And remember, in the 1970s, 80s, they had black coffee mugs, and they looked, they were like clear glass, but when you put coffee in them, they were black. Don't know if you remember that.
Okay. No, I don't remember, but okay.
But they had them. So this looked like that. I'm not sure if it looked like metal at first or black stained glass. So there was a little discussion. I could hear them like, so we were having a one-way conversation. He was talking directly to me through the Wi-Fi, but I could feel the others pushing against our link. So he was keeping them from me, whether, again, that was for my safety, their safety, but whatever it was a safety issue. It was a little conflab. They were talking about what was going to happen. But when he started to talk to them, I couldn't hear them, but I could hear him talking to them. I couldn't hear their replies. And it's like, no, she's curious. And as I went to step forward, this really surprised me. This little one, like a jelly baby, was slightly taller than a jelly baby. It was so fast. I've never seen anything move so quick. And it was a little white being. He must have been a few rows back, and he just like, it was like a flash of light, and he was stood directly about 8-10 feet, less than that, in front of me. And it was like defiance. He stood there, and all I got from him was not anger. It was probably anger, but I was perceived as a direct threat.
Wow.
And it did not want me there. And the one that knows me, he ordered him to stand back. He didn't say stand. He ordered him to stand back. I couldn't then hear what the conversation was, but he was definitely in control. I think he was being watched on the different levels. And the feeling I got is when they talk to you, it's like they read your feelings as like a spoken word. And then it's like, how do you know what accent it is? Well, they use the words in your head, or they use the images the knowledge you have. So, but it was like an unspoken word, and this thing did not want to retreat. It did stand back, but it didn't go far. It did not want me there. It saw me as a direct threat to the pods, and I thought, I couldn't really think. Later on, you think, well, why would that be? But it wasn't until he urged me on. The one that knows me urged me on. They just wanted to get on with what was next. And then I stopped, and I looked down and at this black pod, and I looked over, and I was allowed to bend down. As I went bent down, I could see through the top of this, and there was a baby. There was a baby, about an 8-month-long pregnancy, inside this huge pod. And when I looked up, there was hundreds and hundreds of these pods in rows of threes. There was a little tube. As I leant over, now I stopped. Everything stopped, and there was another conversation. And he was trying to say, "I wasn't going to be a threat. She's curious. She just wants to look." The second, just as I went to put my hand on that pod, I think panic erupted in him. Now I've never seen him panic, but looking back now, I think they try and placate you, or they try and speak to you like in a dumb way for them, to slow it down. And they're like, he was giving me answers straight away before I could even speak. And they must have felt the feeling. And he's like, "No, look, the baby's not cold. The baby's safe. Don't worry. The baby's not cold. We're not hurting the baby." This is what he was telling me. But I realized that this pod was cold. And he said, "No, look." He said, "Look." And I looked. And as I went to look, I saw this red light. He said, "See that red light?" He said, "The baby's fine. That red light is keeping the baby warm in there." He said, "Maybe cold on the outside, but the baby's warm. We're not hurting the baby." So that was the message I got. And I'm like, kind of relief. Now, I think if you're in a drug state, walking about a craft, and if I wanted, what I have learned, if you're in an upset mood, whatever, it's not working on you. But if you have got the old adrenaline going, you could easily overcome that ship. You could easily reach out and grab one of those little buggers, but they're so fast. But you could easily, I can understand why they subdue you. You wouldn't want a human being like running around like Godzilla, taking a ship.
Right.
So, and he placated me very quickly, and then he said, "Yes, that's fine." And I thought, "What's fine?" And I wanted to touch it. So as I bent down to touch it, I touched this pod. It was cold, and I stopped. My link broke instantly with his and theirs. I was no longer listening. I'm talking to him. I was in a link with these hundreds and hundreds, I want to say thousands, little pipsqueak, little female voices. And I thought, "Oh my God, they're all female. They're only breeding females." And I was linked to every single one of them. They were all talking like little pipsqueaks, like just talking all at once in my head. It was amazing. I couldn't understand what one of them was saying. It was like thousands, but I knew I don't know how I knew they were only females. And then I'm not sure what happened for them to break the link, or how long I was stood there. I don't know. I'm not sure if I was pulled away, forced away, or what. The next thing I know, I'm stood back a couple of inches from it. And I think my hands are down. And I'm like, "Oh my God, they're only breeding females." The second I thought that, I stopped the link. The second my hand came off that pod, I stopped the link with the girls. And they all rushed in. Every one of them that was there in that room, in that link, all rushed in my head. It was like metal ants inside my head that were marching about. They couldn't care if you were a mass murderer, a liar, if you were a rapist. They were just wanted to know how I knew in there that they were all girls, and I didn't know. And they turned everything over inside my head, like marching in my brain, trying to find the answer, and they couldn't. I didn't know how they knew they were all females. And then while this was going on, I kind of flipped back. I'm not sure if I twitched or moved or how long I was there for. I saw the red light. Now, whether it was done to distract me or he generally wanted to see what I knew, this red light pulsed along the floor. And then it must have been a couple of seconds or a minute. I'm not sure how long I stood there. It did it again. And he knew it drew my interest. So whether it was to take me away from the pods in that situation, or to calm me down. I now believe, looking back, it was to calm me down, to get a handle on the situation, or to see what I knew. And he was in the link. He didn't try to search my brain or anything else. He was there either as a guide or as a scientist, whatever he was doing. And he said, no, that is our, because I wanted to know where it went. And he said, no. So I was just stuck where I was. And he said, that's our energy. He said, I'll show you. He said, it goes around the ship. And as you'll see, the line will get thicker. He said, as it goes around, it gets bigger. And he showed me an image in my head, which I drew. If you look on BFOG, Birmingham, oh God, come back to me in a minute, Birmingham UFO group, and go onto case files, look under Southampton case files, and all the rest of my pictures and images are on there. And he drew me this, I drew him this image of their, how they use their energy. And it was literally like a box with like three boxes in it and like a wave. It looked like a sound wave that went through it, entered the box. But there was another wave, like a carrier wave on it, that went in and zigzagged like mad in the first box, slowed down in the second box, again in the third box. Then it rejoined the wave and went back out, and it went back around the ship. And as it used the energy, this ball got big. It went out as a little line and come back as a giant ball, and then it all started again. Then I was yanked back to the bed. It must have been to get on with like, this thing, to get on with whatever was next. And when I was there, I was like, the bright white light came, and then, excuse me, I've got a sip of my tea, sorry. Excuse me. And the bright white light came. And when I came round, I was laid flat on this bench, and I don't like being flat. And he knew I was distressed, and he's like, if you agree to behave, I'll sit you up. So I agreed to behave. He said, you won't be allowed to, because I was only at a 30-degree angle, I wasn't laid flat. I don't like being laid flat. So he goes, you won't be allowed to move for this next bit. He said, you will not be allowed to move. He said, I'll be here, but you won't be allowed to move. Do you agree to, you okay? You know, do you agree? You have to agree for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. I'm like, okay. I had no idea what was going on. I stopped hearing him. And then the one that saw me as a threat approached the bottom of the bed, of this bench, from the left-hand side angle. There must have been about 16 or 20 of these little beings, and tall ones, all onto one side from what I could just see. And I could just see the pods in the distance. So we're still in the same kind of location, and there was loads of stuff to the left-hand side, which I couldn't see. At this time, he was back on my right-hand side. And this thing approached the bottom of the bench, and it was holding like the same type of rag I had on. It was just covered my breasts to like just above my knees, and it looked like a rag. And he was holding this bundle, like this rag, and it got closer, approached very, very cautiously. You could tell it did not want to be near me. And it held this rag, a thing like that, to the side, in front and to his side. And then he pulled the rag back, and I'm not quite sure what happened. The next thing I know, I was yanked back down on the bed, and it was gone. And it took me a couple of seconds. I'm not sure how long I was out for it. But when I came round again, one I know me was looking over me, and he's like, you frightened a baby. I'm like, what happened? What happened? He said, you frightened a baby. I'm like, what? I didn't know what's going on. I didn't feel maternal. What had happened was, when he pulled this thing down, he was holding a clone of me. It was me as a baby. It was me as a baby. She had like black hair. It didn't look quite right. She was very, very pink. And he was holding her up. And it was me. It was me as a baby. It was me as a clone. And but she opened her eyes, and she had, like, I've got dark eyes, but her eyes were completely black. It was me spliced with them. So I'm not sure if I freaked out, knew instantly it was me with them, what they'd done. But she was like black inside. I couldn't connect with it. And it freaked me out in that second. And they obviously perceived that as a major threat, and they scooped the baby away. And I was yanked back down I knew it was going to be over in more ways than one. I was like a dog on the end of a chain. And if I didn't behave, that was going to be it. So I got that message loud and clear. And by this time, the one that knows me, he said, it all went bright white light again. And then he's like, you frightened the baby. I'm like, what's going on? He said, the baby wants to meet you. I'm like, I didn't. No, I'm not a paternal. I'm not a paternal person at all.
So this was your hybrid baby.
Yeah, there's hundreds of them. All these pods were my babies. That's why I could link them.
Oh my God.
Not just one. All of these, hundreds of them. But it gets back later on.
Oh,
sorry, God. He's next to me. And he said, the baby wants to meet you. I thought, what do you mean the baby wants to meet you? It's the baby. Can it talk? I must have agreed, because you don't have to think about it. Your actions or your thoughts or whatever, they read them before they really come out. So they know your answer really before you say it. And I must have said yes, or he perceived it out of inquisitiveness. They took a lot more precaution this time. He said, you won't be allowed to move. And I said, no, I'm not going to cooperate. And he said, if we sit you up, because they know I don't like being laid down. I absolutely hate it. I'm not sure if it's where they put stuff in me or whatever, he said, we will sit you up. He said, you will not be allowed to move at all for this. Do you agree? I'm like, yes. Okay. Then it all went bright white light again. When I woke up, I was sat like at a 90-degree angle. I was sat bolt right up like this, and it felt like someone had moved my face over my left shoulder, and I was just looking. So all I could see, I couldn't see any of this in front of me. I was just looking down at my left shoulder, down that way. So they physically had moved my face and body. I think my arms were stuck down on my body. And I think they were just making sure they were taking extra precautions. And this the one that didn't want me there, the one that perceived me as a threat, brought this baby over, and it was really standoffish. It walked about he was holding the baby, held the baby this time by the shoulders and arms or underneath the arms. And he put it towards my face, and he was stood back like that. He was physically holding it like that. He did not want to be near me. And all I could do was look. I couldn't do anything else. My eyes were pinned. I couldn't move my eyes to look round. And she opened her eyes and looked at me. And that was it. I was linked to her. I linked directly to her. Now, she had all my memories to 8 months or 2 years before. So there was a cut-off point. So she looked like an 8-month-old baby. She looked like she'd been born and she'd been alive for about 8 months. That's how she looked, like a chubby little 8-month-old girl. She didn't look as pink under the light she did the first time. Her hair didn't quite. It was a clone. It was a clone of me. And so we were in this bond together, so I call it the bonded. And she said, I've taken a picture. Can I take a picture? I said, you've taken a picture? What do you mean? Show me what you've done. Can I have a look? And she showed me this image in my head, and oh my God, my hair was a mess. I'd never felt hot or cold in there before, and it looked like there was sweat running down me. My hair looked like I'd been dragged through a bush backwards. My face was really pink and red. I looked a total mess, and I looked horrible, like the Wicked Witch of the West, melting. I looked terrible.
Oh dear.
And, I did. I wasn't expecting that, and because you don't see yourself, do you? And when you're in this environment, and I said, why have you done that? And she said, so the others would know. I said, what do you mean the others would know? She said, when they all wake them up, she said, they want to know where they come from. And of course, this picture, she's trying to explain to me, it contained my blood pressure, my heartbeat, all the pheromones I was releasing, my hormones. It was more than a picture she had taken. It was like a digital catalogue that she said that she was going to leave in the link. And at each one of these pods, when they open, if they wanted to, they can access that memory at that point in time to know where they come from, to know who I was. And what did she say? And I think that was it. And then next thing I know, they pulled her away to break the link. They weren't in the link. It was just me and her. And he ran off with her. I didn't get a chance to talk to her or anything else. I didn't feel, oh my God, that's my baby, bring it back. I didn't feel maternal towards her. I think I was still in shock, to be honest with you. I was all kind of numb to it. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know that was going to happen. They never told me that was going to happen. And that was kind of it. And I kept saying, what are we doing? Where are you going? Where are you taking her? Where are you taking her? And it was never answered. They just went off. Now, at that point, I knew I was distressed, and everything went bright white light. And then I was in this smaller room with I was laid down flat. Then I was laid at a 30-degree angle, and the one that knows me, I was in a room alone with him, and the light was like coming down. I couldn't determine where the light source was coming down, but it was like a room with a light. It was like a light room, and I was in there. And I think they were getting ready to put me back. When you're distressed or in that state, or whatever they give you, I've since learned from another experience that they put a light and a pheromone together, like a frequency of light and a frequency of pheromone to subdue humans. It obviously doesn't work on me anymore, but and that's how they subdue humans. Now, it wasn't working on me, or I was very agitated. I'm a very kind of girl, fight or flight, and I'm going to stay and fight. So I'm very, one of the very stern women. And I was very distressed, and he was trying to, I believe he was trying to calm me down. He was going, no, look. And all of a sudden this wall, this light was gone, and it was this wall, like a giant wall. And it looked like cartoon strips from a distance. And as I looked at it, it's like I zoomed in, so I got closer to it. I don't know how. And I went from kind of sitting, I was laid, to sitting. And as I got closer, he's going, no, look at the top left-hand corner. And he wasn't pointing, he was telling me to look. He said, no, look again. And as I looked, the screen got bigger, and as I was zoomed into this picture. Once I was in this picture, they put me in a bubble. And I'm not sure if I said what was going on, where was it taking me, where do we come from? I'm not quite sure what the conversation was, because it happens very, very quickly. And the next thing I know, we're in this bubble, and we are in space. It's like being strapped to the front of a rocket. It's like being strapped to the front of a rocket, and it's like you're being pulled. You're not moving, but you're being pulled. You can't move. It's like you can only look. It's like just coming towards you, and you can't see nothing. And then we flashed past something, and we either went to stop or slow down or stop. So we stopped. It was like we flashed past something. So it was like just going forward, and you stopped. So we stopped. And I see what I can only describe as Jupiter. But there's this huge ship. No one's ever going to believe the size of this thing. It was not man-made. That thing never came from Earth. This thing must have been bigger than Earth. It looked like a huge submarine in space, like a black long submarine. That's all I could describe it. It looked like a black long tube, and this thing was absolutely huge, and it was just underneath. Because as we came up underneath it, it blocked. I couldn't see the planet anymore. We were just underneath it. I couldn't see nothing. It was just this black shadow. And next thing I know, we were inside. Everything went bright white light for a split second. We were inside. Sorry, I've got another sip of my drink. Excuse me. We were inside, and had this rag on again, I think. And there was a little white one in front of me, smaller than the little Jelly Belly ones. He looked like them, but a miniature version, but he was bright white, like he'd never seen sun in his life. And he wasn't bothered by me. He looked at me, looked at the being, because I could feel, I didn't know the one was behind me, the one that knows me. I could feel him. I just knew he was there. Mm-hmm. And this little one just kept walking. And then I got an urge to walk forward again. And as I walked forward, I just stopped, and it was like a huge, long hallway. It looked like it was like a blacky grey wall, and you could, as I got closer, it was very, very dim lit. You could see it looked like some type of fabric. I'm not quite sure. And I had an urge to put my right hand up, so I put my right hand up against this wall. And all of a sudden, my hand came back. I kind of stepped back a little bit, and it looked like three or four giant drawers in this wall. And it came out, and as it came out, there was bright white light, piercing bright white light that shone out of the drawers. And the flap folded down on the front, and he's going, look. And in there was a box about this big, and had 50, maybe 100 or 150, I'm not sure, of these little petri dishes about the size of a 50p piece. Looked like they had black dots in them. And he said, they're your babies.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, what? And he showed me the route to this new, and before I could say anything, he's like, they're asleep. So I was obviously going to freak out again, because they're asleep. When they arrive, we wake them up, then they kind of grow them. He said, so they're not being hurt. He showed me this. And then it went from that, and we were in this bubble thing again. And again, it's not being pulled from the front of this bubble like a rocket, and being strapped to the front of a rocket. And we're going through what I presume, I'm not sure if it was space. It's like you're in a bubble, but you're going, but you're not going anywhere in the bubble. It's the bubble moving. It's weird, and it's going so fast you can't see it. It's like, again, it's not being pulled through this string, and all of a sudden it was like a roller coaster, because it's always been like a second and you're there, but this thing was like a roller coaster for a second. And I'm like, what was that about? Because you were like floating in a link. It's like a link. Mm-hmm. And he said, we can't fly through black space. And I didn't even know. It wasn't until years later. It wasn't until I went to that abduction meeting. I didn't even know what black space for. Black space apparently is a thing. The scientists only discovered it a couple of years ago about black space. And he said, "Where did you hear from that?" I said, "A few years ago," and it's documented in my case. They told me they can't fly through black space.
Okay, what is black space?
I don't know. He said it's like a void within space where there's nothing, like a vacuum within a vacuum.
Whoa.
I didn't even know that existed. And that's the reason we changed our course. And we come up above this planet. He said, "Can you draw this planet for me?" So I drew it. He said, "Tina, that's not a planet." He said, "You've drawn a planet with a chunk out of it, like a..." And I said, "No, we flashed past this moss green planet. It looked like a beautiful pearl, but it was like a mossy green and it was glowing, a little one. And this planet looked black. I couldn't see where the light was coming from behind it." He said, "That's where the babies are going." And there was like 4 or 5 chunks around it. He said, "Planets around, they're not like what you've drawn." I said, "Well, that's what they showed me. They told me that's where they're going." And next thing I know, we were coming back. But when we were on the ship, he said, they let me walk about to this window. It looked like a window, like you had to go up a little ramp. Oh, they did. I didn't. I just stood next to it, and it's like a window appeared. A window was there, like a viewing gallery, if you like. And I looked out and I could see the earth. And they said, "Would I like to stay with them?" He said, "Because I can understand what they're saying." And I thought about it, and they obviously read my thoughts and no straight away. It was like they knew it was no before I even said it. And my family, I've never seen any of them eat. I'm not going to have my family. And he said, he said, "You're very brave." He said, "You're going to die on this planet, and this is how you're going to die." And then they showed me like the earth blowing up. But going back to that ship.
So wait. They showed you the earth blowing up?
Yeah, it's like it's horrendous. Like there was this fire. People were melting. It was like a huge explosion. And all I remember is this grey kind of wave. There's redness in the sky. It looked like missiles, but I don't know. These things look so huge, and it was just grey and red air. It was horrendous. And next thing I know, I was awake. But going back to that,
okay,
where those babies were, all these little things, these embryos on the ship. Now this thing was huge. If this corridor was a quarter of a mile long or half a mile long, there must have been billions of eggs just in the bit I was in. So can you imagine? They must have had everyone's DNA from the whole planet in there.
Wow. That's just incredible. That's incredible. Tina, I want to show some of these pictures.
Yeah, go for it.
Because we've got some evidence here. First of all, what is this about?
So if you look, actually, that's the picture I've taken 2 years ago. I'm actually 52 now. I'm 53 next month. So it was about 2 years ago this time of year. And as you can see, I went upstairs. So I'd had a hysterectomy in my late 30s, early 40s. That picture's taken when I'm 51, 52. And I woke up, was laying on the sofa when I went to bed, woke up, I had a pain and like a flash of light. And then I woke up and I was like that. And my dressing gown's the only thing that fit me. I couldn't get any clothes on. And my partner took me to A&E and they said it was a result of pregnancy. I said, I had a hysterectomy over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I said, I'm 52. I've been on HRT for 10, 12 years by then.
Yeah.
I said, how can you be a result of residual pregnancy, residual in like that? And scan. They said, next day I woke up, went to bed, white right flash again, wake up, my stomach was flat.
Oh my God. That's bizarre.
Yeah,
that is just bizarre. Okay. Yeah. What's this?
So after this was one, when I went to bed, I noticed like I'd had a mole. The last time when you look down your body, you notice if you've got a scar and I noticed I thought, oh, it was a mole, another mole, and I thought, oh, it looked red, and it wasn't like another moles. And then I went to sleep, had this episode, this bright white episode. They'd taken me, and when I come back, I thought I saw glowing numbers or symbols underneath my skin, just 3 of them further up. When I looked at the bottom of just above where the numbers were under my skin, these 3 symbols. I saw that. And then it wasn't until about 2 years after David Hodgren put it out in the paper, another gentleman come forward. He said, I've got exactly the same thing on my body. And apparently 2 or 3 people come forward in the same position on their hand, same 3 marks.
Mm-hmm.
People that have said that they've been abducted. So because he documented everything at the time, like you said, pictures or scars, and then anything else? Yeah, another picture.
Yeah.
So
This one.
I was having obviously pregnancy problems, and my surgeon said, Tina, I'm not quite sure what's going on. He said, but you need to have a hysterectomy. We think you've got ovarian cancer. I just suffered another ectopic pregnancy, ruptured ectopic pregnancy, which was quite far along apparently, and it was twins. He said, but we need to have a hysterectomy. So they planned it, took me in, and they told me it was just going to be laparoscopy, modern technology, a couple of holes. It'd be an hour and a half. Time I come around, and you'd be back on the ward. I said, not a problem. Now, here in the UK, everything is filmed, and you have to sign a consent form when you go down, like for photography and everything. It's all like it says on here, in case they want to take pictures or samples, and you have to sign everything. Or there's a change, is a threat to your life, and they have to remove a limb or something. So you've got they've got permission from you before they take you down, because you're basically having an organ removed from your body. So I went down very hesitant. They had 3 anaesthetists there. So what didn't happen this time was they walked me into the operating theatre. Always you go into a little room beforehand, don't you? A little like dentist room, and they drug you up, and then they wheel you in, and you're asleep and you're awake. I wasn't. I was wide awake. They walked me in. They laid on the bed. They got my gown like puffed out around me, and there's 2 or 3 anaesthetists there with and a couple of nurses. And I said, Tina, I want you, to get comfy. Huge room. There wasn't a lot of people in there at that time. There's only a few people. And they put this, give me a mask to hold. They said, well, you tell us when it's comfortable. We said, we're giving you an injection. Give me an injection. He said, I want you to count back from 10. Count back from 10. He said, give me another injection. He said, I want you to count back from 20. And then they give me a different mask. He said, right, hold on then. I counted down, and that was it. Next thing I know, I must have been a day or so later. I'm not quite sure. I think my eyes rolled briefly. Apparently I didn't come around for about 4 days. And what happened was, when they went in, they found all this membrane, like black membrane, which they couldn't penetrate, they couldn't get through. So they had to give me a lateral cut straight across from hip to hip. So it was a 3-leg cut, so that's 267 stitches.
Oh dear.
And then they said that there was a significant amount of this stuff they had to remove before they got to my inner workings. And it took them about 4 or 5 hours to remove this stuff. There was so much of it. She had at one time, when you were literally, your pelvis was pushed up, you're on the bed, you were like, we pulled you in half. And we both in there, both of our hands pulling this stuff out. And then we gave you a hysterectomy, and then we had to take the sac that was around it as well, because it was severely damaged. And they said, we thought somebody had been testing on you. I said, what do you mean? She said, your pelvis is completely obliterated, both sides, with thousands of needle marks. She said, we cannot explain it. She said, I've been a surgeon for many, many years, 10, 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that in my life. So we sent it off for sampling. She said, I've had to put a drain in because of the bleeding and the access. You've had an organ removed. So they put me in a special, next thing I know, it was a couple of days later, and I was up in a special kind of thing. And then, so they said that they'd never seen anything like it. And this was done on the inside of my body with no external scars. Now, the only other thing I could think of is that I'm O rhesus negative. I've got an extremely rare blood group. So nobody could give me blood, but I can give blood to everybody else. So I've got a universal blood type, which means my blood doesn't have any antigens in it. And I didn't know this until I had my first operation. I had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy the first time. But I think he's kind of changed his mind a bit now. But
is he okay now?
No, he's never really recovered from. I must say, I'm not 90% from that. And don't forget, the older you get, the worse things get, and the more painful things get. So every now and then, this thing will disturb in my stomach. Is they can't heal it. They don't know how to treat it. And it's the best thing, closest thing they can say it looks like is like an agitated ulcer, but it's not. So I'm on Zoprazole for the rest of my life. And because it's the only thing that they can say to cure it. And don't try certain foods, but every now and then it comes up. But it's like my pelvis, everything hurts. So, as a cost, people say, no, I'd love to be abducted. That's what I said at the beginning, you need a psychiatric evaluation if you want to be abducted. It's painful, it's scary, and it's frightening.
Well, everybody has a different experience. And of course, they have different agendas, the different types. obviously with you, they were using you for breeding, for creating thousands of embryos. Uh, just one more question before we go, because this is absolutely fascinating. I could talk to you for hours, and I'll have to have you come back sometime to talk some more. But the being that knows you and that you know him, has he ever given you an explanation for anything?
No.
No.
He's shown me things, and if I've asked him about things he's shown me, one was like, I think I asked where we came from. Don't forget, when people say, why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you ask this? When you're taken, you're frozen. You can't, your brain doesn't work to ask questions. But when you're in a transitional period, you can, your brain works.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your brain's frozen. And I said, kind of, where did we come from? And he showed me, this is not our world. We did not come from it. It's something they did to our planet. They like volcanoes. Something they did underwater to a volcano caused our planet to rupture. And that is why we're here. But they choose to be in those bodies, but that's probably for the second part or another time. But yeah, that's not their true. They can leave their bodies at will, and they're in those bodies extremely a long time. We only leave our bodies when we die, so we don't know enough about death. But
oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program, Tina. This has absolutely been fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
But thank you for sharing your story. I know a lot of people will be interested in hearing this, and do keep in touch.
Yeah, guys, buy my book, E.T. Go. There you go. It's The Bonded, The Truth About Alien Abduction, and you can find it on Amazon. It's I think it's less than a packet of cigarettes here in the UK. There it is there.
All right.
And it came out that big. I was going to put pictures in it, and then Amazon wouldn't let me put pictures in it for some reason. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you all again someday.
Okay. Bye-bye. What a story that was. Goodness. Well, stay tuned for more good things coming in the future, and hopefully another interview with Tina, because that she's just got a fascinating story. Incredible things that are going on in the world that everybody needs to know about. Good night, everybody.